Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Chris Wright and I work as a landscape photographer in Granada, Spain. Now, this week I wanted to talk some more about Photomator. Now, those of you who saw the original Photomator video that was about 3 weeks ago, there's a link to it up here, will know that I covered basic editing, selective editing, and it was really a review video, and I'm very impressed with Photomator. It's an excellent raw processing software in very many ways. It's not professional level, and I don't think they pretend to be professional level at this stage, but certainly for a novice it's excellent. Now this week what I wanted to get into was, in response to a couple of questions really, was more advanced editing techniques using layers and masks, and we also cover off how Photomator handles non-destructive editing. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, there's one topic I just wanted to touch on before we get into the editing, and that is the topic of how Photomator does non-destructive editing. So I've constructed a quick test here. So I've got a directory called Photomator test, and I've copied a raw file into this directory. Here's the raw file. I've imported it into Photomator. So if I bring this raw file up and I hit the show info button, I can see here it is. It's 74 megabytes. It's a raw file, and that's all there is. That's it. Raw, as far as Photomator is concerned, is read-only. So what it's doing is it's converting this file into a different format, which is represented with, it's a Photomator format. It's represented by this image here. Now, I just want to show what happens when I do some basic edits on here. So we're going to get rid of the info for the moment, and we'll just very quickly do a couple of edits to bring this picture in. So I'll take the highlights down a little bit, add the mid-range brightness, add a bit of contrast, perhaps take that black point out a little bit, light in the middle, touch of clarity, and gives it a little bit of pop, and that's fine. That's really all we need to do at the moment to make this point. So if I do done here, I now see that there's a raw icon and there's a link icon here. Now let's find out what that link icon's about. Show info. And what I'm seeing here is there's a raw file plus a sidecar file. If I click on the sidecar file, we can go back to my Photomator test directory. And here is the sidecar file. So what we're seeing here is the original raw file is untouched, and the sidecar file is currently 348 kilobytes, and this contains all of the alterations that I've done to the picture so far. Okay, so that's how Photomator handles images and non-destructive editing. Okay, let's get on with this for real. I'm going to revert this back to the original. Okay, so that's gone back to the original. Let's just have a quick point out of what we're going to do to the picture. So we want to make this area, we've got a discrete area here which is bathed in sunshine. It's autumn, it's got beautiful brown, green foliage, and we want to bring the eye into here a little bit more. That's very dark, so at the moment our eye's resting here. No bad thing, but just as a matter of choice, I might want to bring these highlights up. I want to accentuate the oranges, brighten up this green here, and bring some shadows, some deeper shadows into this mountain area. And really that's pretty much it. I'm just going to very quickly recap on the colour adjustments that are available, and then we're going to get into layers. So what I'm going to do as a matter of good practice here, really, I'm going to make an adjustments layer. Now this basically gives me a fallback in case anything goes horribly wrong. No reason to believe it will, but it gives me the ability to get rid of all the layers and go back to my original raw file. So our white balance is okay, our exposure is okay, we've got plenty of headroom to the right, plenty to the left. I might want to raise the highlights just a little bit, take that slightly over to the right. Drop my shadows a little bit, but I've got this area here, so I need to be careful with that. Bring up some mid-range brightness, bring up this, so that's really bringing up this foreground area. And I'm going to leave contrast because I can add contrast in other ways, which I'll get to later, but actually here's one of them, the black point. Just a smidgen on the black point. Okay, and that will do me for the basic edits. Now I want to get into some selective edits, and I want to bring up this beautiful orange colour here. Now, there's two ways I can do this, and I'm going to show you the second way in a minute, but with selective colour, I can change the hue. I can make that dark rust coloured, or I can make that more green. But I want to edge it towards the rust, but not massively, so I'll take a little bit off that. I'm going to add saturation to it, and add a bit of brightness to it to make it pop a little bit more. And I'm going to do this also with the green colour here. So let's just have a look and see what happens with the green colour. Let's go, that really takes everything out of it. So I'm going to leave my hue alone, saturate it ever so slightly and brighten it up a bit. Okay, so all well and good. It's not really dramatic. Let's have a look at the before, after. So before, after, so we've lifted the picture a little bit, that's fine. I mentioned curves. This is the tool that I use mostly to get contrast into my pictures, and the reason that I use this is because if I don't want to make these blacks any darker, which I don't really, I can avoid that by sort of starting my curve here. So if I put a point in there and I lift it, I'm not affecting these blacks at all. But I've substantially raised the foreground here, and let's just have a look here. So take that out, add it in, take that out, add it in. Much better. Okay, now I want to go straight to creating more layers. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is to apply some adjustments only to the mountain range, and I want to make the sky, if anything, less slightly distracting. It's a little bit bright, and so it's really grabbing our attention, which I don't really want too much. Okay, so first off, let's have a look and see what we've got in the toolbox. So those are our color adjustments. We can select subject, but we don't have a subject as such in this picture. We can select sky, so that's one we can think about. Select background is really an inversion of select subject, so as the icon gives away, so that's not really going to help much. We've got a brush, which might help a lot. And we've got linear gradients and radial gradients, and we've got color range. So let's have a look here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to raise these shadows in here because it's very, very black. And so I'm going to use a radial gradient to do that. And you just bring it down here, change the shape of it. I can rotate it. And I want to get it down there, take it out a little bit more. That's probably fine. And we've got here feather. Now if I take that to 0, we've got a real hard outline, which is obviously no good for photographs. So I tend to keep my feather for landscape photographs certainly on 100%. And let's just lift those shadows. Okay, a little bit, we don't have to go all there. And I'm going to similarly take that black point down. So if I do this, the combination of the black point and the shadows, I don't want it to be completely black, so that's fine. And I can add a little bit of contrast in there just to make that differentiation. And I can go before, after, before, after. Okay, so we've got more light in there, that's good. Alright, so let's have a go now at the mountains and separating out the sky. So we've now got our original raw layer, we've got our adjustments layer, and we've got a radial gradient. So what I'm going to do is to make a new layer with a brush. Okay, with my brush I'm going to paint over the areas that I want to affect. Now I can be a bit sort of cavalier about this, and I'll show you why in a second. Don't need to spend ages picking out the finer details. Now with this brush adjustment, we've got brush size, we've got softness, and we've got opacity. So I can take that down once I've made the adjustments. And I can use that as like a remover to get rid of the worst of this. Okay, but there's something else I can do here. So within this brush layer, I can add another layer. I'll make that a subtraction, and I'm going to use select sky. Okay, and what you see now is you've got a wonderfully sharp, clear edge around that sky. And that is because we've added the sky layer to the same layer and we've subtracted it here. So we've used this icon and we've subtracted that layer. So this is much better. And what I'm going to do now with this is to take up the contrast a little bit, take up the black point, get those shadows working properly. Okay, and take down the exposure. Now I'm not going to add any clarity, in fact I might add some negative clarity here. And the reason for this is because things fade away. And that looks very dramatic, but it's not remotely realistic. So just take a little bit of clarity out, so I've got the best of both worlds. And let's have a look. Without, with, without, with. Okay, so that's one way we can combine our layers. So let's have a look and see what we've got. We've got a brush layer, and within that brush layer we've got two masks. We've got the original brush and we've got a negative sky. So we've taken the sky out to create this really sharp layer. And using this slider and highlighting this layer, we can moderate the effect of this mask, okay? But I'm going to keep it as it is for the moment. Now I'm going to put a new sky layer in and just take as much saturation out of that sky as I can. Okay, now here we don't want to really mess with these bits here. So I'm just going to slight moderation to this, oops. There, so we've got the sky, we'll do a subtract, we'll use the brush, so we're doing the reverse really of what we were doing before. And we're just subtracting these areas from my sky selection, and that's fine. Okay, and what I'm going to do with the saturation is pull that saturation down. Okay, if we push it up, it becomes more distracting. I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. Okay, so that's now looking good. Now, I'll demonstrate another one here. So I'm going to adjust the colours in these autumn leaves. So I'm going to go for a bright area there. And again, I want to use that negative brush to take away some of the things. Well, let me first of all have a look and see what we've got. So if I bring up the exposure, we're actually drawing our eye into the foreground, which is good. I quite like that. Bring up that mid-range on those colours, that's nice, that's picking this up here. And I want to really saturate those. We had a really beautiful golden light here. So that's fine. I like that. That's good. I want to bring this green up here, but I don't want to bring that green up there. That's already attracting our attention quite enough. Thank you very much. So I'm going to add another colour range. This is okay. So now we should expect to see two colour ranges. Yeah, this is the one we're working on here. And I want to get a bright green out of this tree. And just trying to get it separate from being the colour of that grass. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take my sample from that grass, and now what I'm going to do, I can refine that. I want this tree, but I don't really want the grass, so I can refine that colour range, taking most of it out of there, and then I can do another subtract layer in here. So subtract, use my brush to do that, and I'm going to just take this out. Okay, another bit there. All right, so go back to here, get my colour range, and let's have a adjustment of that colour. brighten this up. Okay, make it more intense. And we've now got quite a nice adjustment. You'll notice it's not affecting this area here at all, even though that was the area I took my sample from. Okay, and this I like. This is nice as an edit. Okay, I don't think there's any more need to do any more of this. Now, the one thing that will be useful in this, a lot of working with layers and working with masks is about lateral thinking, and Photomator have given us quite a lot to play with. So we can use color ranges. Let's just recap over this. Subject, sky and background. I've shown how we can differentiate areas of the picture from one another with a little bit of lateral thinking. So if you haven't, as in most landscape pictures, you haven't got a clear subject, these masks are not going to be terribly helpful, but the sky mask is helpful, as is the color range. So we could do a color range, and if that was attracting attention to the sky as well, then we could subtract the sky from a color range. We could also subtract a gradient from the color range, and what I might do just to demonstrate this linear gradient is bring that down here. I actually want to rotate this so that, right, take it out of the sky into this area here. Okay, and we're now got a linear gradient there, and we can just lift that a little bit there, and I think that's generally an improvement. Put up my highlights, get some contrast going a little bit. Okay, and that's plenty for me. That's enough, and I think we've demonstrated, most of the advanced techniques here. The one thing that I would add to this, if I could, is intersections. Now, Pixelmator does support intersections, and what intersections give us is the ability to combine two masks, but to have the effect apply only to the common areas of the two masks. And it gives us a way, for example, of picking out like a tree trunk in here or a tree trunk in there, where I can use the color range and a brush intersection to select the whole tree in a color range, just to pull out the dark bits of it, and then I can use that intersection to isolate the trunks and the branches of the tree, and that would be really useful. And I'd hope, because that is featured in Pixelmator, I'd hope to see that coming into Photomator. The one last thing I'm going to do is, we've got quite a distracting area of brightness there, and I want to take that out. So back into my layers, add another one. Add another layer. I'm going to do this very simply with a brush. Just apply the brush there, and I'm going to drop the exposure, kill off the highlights completely, kill off the brightness, and that's fine. That's it just tweaks the eye ever so slightly, but then, I could go on, I could reduce these little tweaks here, a couple of little highlights here, one highlight there. I could go on with this, but I think we've accomplished our objective here. So let's get back to the studio. So that was layers and masks in Photomator, and I think you'll agree they're easy to use. I think you probably, if you're new to photo editing, you probably want to get your head around the concept of using multiple masks within a single layer, and applying the subtract and additive function to masks. So have a look at that, have a practice with that. I would recommend doing this on a really simple photograph like the one that I've done here, which gives you plenty of different colours, plenty of different contrast, but not too many competing aspects. So you can really focus on, you know, this photograph splits into basically three. You've got the foreground, you've got the mountains, and a very little bit of sky at the top. So you really don't have a lot to get bogged down in, and it becomes simply a question of what do you want to get out of the photograph. Okay, so hopefully the video has been useful for you. If it has, do give us a like down below, or subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We cover a lot of different things on this channel, different applications, different cameras, lenses, software. And I hope you found it enjoyable, and I hope we'll see you again in a future video. All right, thanks a lot, guys. See you next week. Cheers.